Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in this video we are going to be reviewing Tenet, which is another brand new cinematic movie release. Very exciting to be bringing you a cinematic release. You know, cinemas have opened in the UK, which is really cool, and it's allowed me to bring you another brand new movie release, which is very exciting. However, in the case of Tenet, it's just really disappointing. This movie really should have been so much better than it was. Now, if you're a fan of my movie reviews, then you'll see that actually I'm not one to jump on the bandwagon, and actually I usually have very different opinions to other critics and what other typical people say about movies. However, in the case of Tenet, I do have to agree with everyone and say that Tenet is actually really not that great of a movie. It really should have been, especially after all of the hype that was happening pre-release for this movie. I thought this movie was going to be one of the best movies ever. However, it's really disappointing and really not that great. Now, it's got Christopher Nolan's name attached to it and also has a really good cast attached to it as well. However, the plot and characters weren't that great, the twists and turns weren't that great, and the use of time travel was not that inspiring either. So like I said, it really should have been so much better than it was, but unfortunately it wasn't, and I'm going to break down exactly why I think that in this brand new movie review. Now, the plot of this movie is based on the concept of inversion, whereby time travels backwards, and this, along with an elaborate end-of-the-world storyline, CIA agents, and time travel, really should have meant that they are great ingredients for a really cool movie, but unfortunately it's just not that inspiring. Now, it's got the expected twists and turns in there, some shocking revelations as well, but unfortunately it just suffers from a lack of a compelling storyline. Now, I'm a massive fan of action movies, Christopher Nolan movies, and time travel movies, so I really did want this movie to be absolutely awesome, but just unfortunately, like I said, the narrative of this movie is just not that great. So from a cast and characters point of view, great cast, not that great characters. It's just such a shame that they didn't develop their characters well enough to make them brilliant on screen. They're just there, the cast are just there, they're kind of doing their parts, but they're just not in a compelling story narrative, which is just the main issue with this movie. But either way, let's go through all of the cast members one by one. So first up, we have John David Washington, who plays a character called the protagonist, which is just really bizarre that they don't even give this character a name, which is just really rubbish. But anyway, so this character, you know, he's got great action sequences and he's okay on screen, but like I said, there's just a lack of a great inspiring narrative for this character to be in. Next up, we have Robert Pattinson, who plays a character called Neil, and he is the protagonist's second in command. Again, he is okay, he's got some great twists and turns in there, but it's just a real shame that the world in which this character is in is just not that compelling. Next up, we have Elizabeth Debicki, who is another supporting character. She's kind of like the trapped wife of the main antagonist in the film, and she really helps the main protagonist in the film in terms of really supporting him throughout the narrative. And finally, we have Kenneth Branagh, who plays the antagonist in this movie, who plays Sator. And I know I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record, but again, with him, he's okay. He's not particularly menacing. He kind of uses inversion technology, but you know, from a main villain point of view, he's not as bad or as menacing as you would expect him to be. So, like I said, you know, from a cast point of view, they got great talent and a great cast associated with this project. However, the characters just really suffered because the overall narrative and style and tone is just not that great. In terms of the visuals of this movie, you know, credit where credit's due, the visuals and the cinematography in this movie look absolutely brilliant. Actually, it's a real spectacle on screen, and if that's what you're after, then you're definitely going to enjoy this movie. You know, the chase sequences look absolutely brilliant, all of the fight sequences look absolutely great, and the use of inversion technology looks really cool. So all of the scenes where they're kind of using inversion look absolutely brilliant, and they also go to some magnificent locations. You know, there's scenes on the yachts and absolutely brilliant landscape scenes in different countries. So if that's what you're after, then you're definitely going to love this movie. But I do feel like it's a classic case of style over substance, because the rest of the movie doesn't necessarily match the brilliant visuals that are in place in this film. But like I said, if you're after just a great cinematic experience, then you're definitely going to enjoy Tenet. In terms of comparisons, it's a real shame because I really wanted this movie to be absolutely brilliant. But let me compare it across the three main categories that this film kind of falls under. So in terms of action movies, I'll compare it to recently released movies. You know, I much preferred Bloodshot, The Old Guard, and Project Power in terms of the action category. In terms of the time travel category, again, I much preferred the Back to the Future series and Endgame. And in terms of Christopher Nolan movies, I much preferred Inception, Interstellar, Memento, and the Dark Knight trilogy as well. So it's just a real shame that this movie can't really compare to other movies across the main categories and genres in which it falls under. But like I said before, from a visuals point of view, it is really good. So in the end, there are loads of revelations that come from the end of Tenet. But like I keep saying, they just didn't really have that much of an impact and they weren't that impressive. You know, the ending of Get Out and Us just definitely leaves a mark with you, and you really want to go back and watch the movie again so that you can kind of put all of the pieces together. But with Tenet, you just don't really care enough to want to watch it again. But let me go through the main revelations anyway. So it's revealed that the protagonist was the mastermind from the future and instructs people to go back in the past and try to stop the apocalypse scenario. Next up, we find out that Neil and the protagonist have been friends for years. So where the protagonist is just meeting Neil for the first time in this movie, in the future he actually does know him and they do a lot of missions together in the future. You also find out that Sator, the main antagonist in the movie, has cancer, and because of that he wants to use inversion technology to destroy the whole world. And the grandfather paradox just means that when you do use inversion technology and you go into the past, you can't necessarily affect the past in the way that they do in Back to the Future 2, but you can use inversion to change things. So I just feel like all of the revelations that were made at the end of the movie just weren't that impressive, they weren't that awe-inspiring, and overall it just did not leave a good impression on me. So overall, I'm sure it will come as no surprise for me to say that I was really disappointed by Tenet. I honestly thought it would be such an awesome movie, especially after all of the pre-release hype that was happening with this movie. I did think that it would be a solid contender against Inception, which is just such a brilliant movie, but this one is just nowhere near as good. It's just got weak storylines, weak characters, weak twists and turns, decent visuals, but just a really weak narrative, and it just was not that compelling. And so for all of those reasons, I have to give Tenet a 3 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.